So director Brad Bird makes a jump from animation into live action and injects a whole new vitality in the Mission Impossible franchise with a sequel that was originally intended to be Tom Cruise's last. So let's light the fuse and see where everything changed around for Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. Having lost a set of nuclear launch codes along with Agent Holloway to a notorious hired gun named Moreau, the IMF break Ethan Hunt out of a Moscow prison to intercept information on someone known only as Cobalt. However, their clever infiltration of the Kremlin to retrieve this data is dashed when Cobalt frames them for his terrorist bombing of the Russian capital. Upon escaping and eluding the Moscow police, Ethan and an entire IMF agency are disavowed by the U.S. government, while the president initiates Ghost Protocol. The IMF secretary goes against orders and allows Hunt to go off the grid, before the secretary himself is inadvertently killed. Hunt escapes with analyst William Brandt to join agents Carter and Dunn to formulate a dangerous plan. They must intercept Moreau in Dubai, as well as Cobalt's man Wistrom, who is there to purchase the launch codes. However, everything goes wrong as their tech malfunctions, forcing the team to take extreme risks to fulfill their mission. Yet despite their most intense efforts through a blinding sandstorm, the briefcase with the codes is lost, putting the world at dire risk. As the team begins to break apart, secrets stir as Brandt reveals he was part of the operation, where Ethan's wife Julia was supposedly abducted and killed, while Carter holds guilt over the loss of Agent Holloway and impulsively killing Moreau. Ultimately, the team has put the pieces back together and forge ahead in Mumbai to shut down a satellite from which Cobalt can launch a nuclear missile strike, which would be an impossible mission in any other hands. So Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol saw its theatrical release in December of 2011, which was 5 years after the release of the previous film in the franchise, first hitting the Dubai International Film Festival and then hitting up many international territories including the United Kingdom, until its exclusive IMAX United States release on December 16th, which featured an extended IMAX preview of The Dark Knight Rises. This followed up until December 21st, where it got its wide theatrical release in the United States, and ultimately grossed worldwide over $694 million of a $145 million budget, making it at the time the highest grossing film in the franchise up until Mission Impossible Fallout 7 years later. And just the entire weirdly fascinating way of how this film got made kind of stems entirely from how Mission Impossible 3, even though it was a lot more critically well received than the second film, it grossed a whole lot less money than the second film. It was the lowest grossing film in the franchise to date. And so Paramount Pictures, they kind of like, not quite sure what to do with it. It's like, well, probably we're going to want to do another one, but do we even like want the Mission Impossible title in there? It's like, they don't know what to really do with the property. And they get so indecisive about so many different things throughout the entire course of production on this entire film, where it kind of becomes an impossible mission in and of itself, making the film and making it as good as it ends up coming out as. Because you got this entire thing where, even in between the two different sequels, Paramount cut loose their deal producing-wise between Tom Cruise and his producing partner Paul Wagner, who ended up going off to MGM and actually running that for a couple of years and doing a pretty good job of it from what I heard. So Paul Wagner was not involved with his entire film or anything like that. So it's kind of this weird type of thing, how things got not going quite as well, kind of like as much as things within the film itself. All the gadgets and all the plans and all the different things aren't quite going to plan. They're not working the way they're supposed to. It was happening the exact same way behind the scenes of the entire film. And of course, there ended up being the whole thing where trying to find the new director here. And of course, J.J. Abrams, he's done some pretty good work from Paramount at this point in time, doing their entire Star Trek reboot. So they probably still had that good relationship, and J.J. still producing the Mission Impossible films, Bad Robot's still involved with it. So I'm sure there's still that linking thread there. JJ is probably the thing that still allows it to happen, despite the fact that he's shooting Super 8 at the same time this is being made, so he's not really involved with it, but there's still that goodwill, that's still that tether on that type of thing to keep things going. And getting director Brad Bird in this entire thing, where he had just been doing animation before, but he'd been doing such highly acclaimed, beloved films such as The Iron Giant and The Incredibles and Ratatouille. The guy had racked up Oscar wins from these films. And just the whole thing where, like, Tom Cruise, he watched this guy, saw his work, and all this type of stuff. Like, you can be a live-action director. You have the skills to transition. You know the language of film. You know how to move the entire thing along, work with such good characters, create good stories, move the entire film in a fashion where it actually becomes an actual motion picture. He knew he saw all the talent, the skills, the artistic eye the guy had to make everything work together. It's like, I want this guy, and he gets in this whole thing, and it was such a intensive type of, like, massive amount of animatics and pre-visualization. Like, so many of the different sequences in the entire film were extensively storyboarded and given animatics to kind of show how everything was going to work together well before they were actually filming anything. Whereas the way that the film is being planned out and prepped for and just mapped out so extensively, a lot of things end up getting changed along the way. Because you're reading, the credited screenwriters are Josh Applebaum and Andre Nemec, who had actually worked with J.J. Abrams on Alias before this, writing several episodes. They're off to do some things that are not quite so good or anything like that, but ends up being the whole thing where it's like they plot out certain things, but they found out it's about 10 weeks or so into production where things are kind of like certain things in the story aren't quite functioning right. And so Tom Cruise ends up calling up Christopher McQuarrie, who had worked with before already on Valkyrie, and ends up obviously becoming like his go-to guy. He works on Edge of Tomorrow, he's working on Top Gun Maverick, and obviously the man behind the next two sequels in this franchise, on top of two other ones that have not yet been released at the time I'm doing this video. Massive type of thing. But the whole thing is like, okay, Chris McQuarrie comes in and he has to catch up on 10 weeks of production and watching all the footage, finding out what sets have been struck, what sets you still have, what sets have not been constructed yet, what can be reshot, what can't be reshot, where they are in the narrative of shooting everything out of sequence, and try to figure out how to smooth over a whole bunch of different things and what was not working in the screenplay. Because originally it was the whole thing like, you don't really know what the villain of the film, Kurt Hendricks, Cobalt, is really after in a certain way. You don't know what's in the briefcase that you're going to Dubai and figuring things out there. And you also have a lot of different things where it's like, Julia, Ethan Hunt's wife, is definitively dead in the original screenplay. And William Brandt, the character portrayed by Jeremy Renner, has a completely different backstory. And just like, his backstory is like, oh, on some mission somewhere, he actually gets two random agents killed. McQuarrie comes in, it's like, we kind of have to flip some things around and tie the Brandt story into Ethan's story. We got to kind of get everything kind of threaded through and make more sense. It needs to be more cohesive. And you need to take the mystery out of the main plot and kind of flip that over into sort of a thing going on with the backstory of Julia there. What happened with that? So all that stuff in the entire film that works so much better is because Chris McQuarrie came in, did that work, and while they're shooting scenes, he's there writing the scenes that they're going to be shooting in like a day or two afterwards. And it's like there's certain scenes where like they wrote it that morning and shot it that afternoon, and now like Jeremy Renner's like, okay, I've been spending weeks portraying this character with this certain backstory. Now I have to kind of shift my entire psychology of how I'm interacting, how I'm acting the scene. It's wild. It's kind of such a fascinating type of thing because, again, we get all that stuff flipped around. We know everything in terms of the main plot. What Cobalt is after, what he's doing, what his objective is, what you're going to Dubai for, what you're swapping out and buying, and all these different things. All of these things are clearly conveyed and very much known to the characters and the audience to make it less of a mystery box thing. It's not the rabbit's foot again. McQuarrie said he doesn't like those types of stories. He likes to have clear stakes, what we're after, what we're going for, how everything is going off, where are we going with the entire story. He wants to have that clear and concise to understand what's happening here and there. So, such a fascinating type of way of how he came in for like a week or something like that, and like after a certain point, parents like, oh, we don't care, we don't really care about reshoots and rewrites. We just want the film shot. They're so unsure about everything. They don't really care what the real story is. They just want to not go over schedule, not go over budget, just this weird type of logistics involved with it. They're not really looking at Brad Bird making the best film possible, finding the right things, or trusting in Tom Cruise being a producer on this whole thing as well, finding the way to make the story the best it possibly can be. Obviously, this changes so much with the later sequels, but this is such a weird point in time. It's like, oh, we're trying to bank on another one, but we're not quite entirely certain what we're doing with it, and we're kind of like, here or there about which way we want to go with it, but is all this patchwork type of thing. They have to like, okay, we're partway through production. It's like, this stuff isn't quite working. That's not quite, doesn't feel like it kind of works. So they have to untangle it and streamline the story here with McQuarrie. And there's even a little extra type of thing where Damon Lindelof, where he's worked with JJ before and after this and stuff like that, and where apparently he came in to also do some script additions to like change the ending, because Paramount wanted their ending for the entire film or something like that. They wanted it back to the way it originally was. They didn't want what McQuarrie was doing with it to be the thing. So it's like they just had no idea what they're doing. The studio just had no clue whatsoever. They were so confused about what the right direction was. It took Tom Cruise and Brad Bird and Chris McQuarrie and all these other people involved with it to kind of steer the ship in the right direction, kind of realize when things weren't quite making sense with the story. And you had to find out where things could be changed and kind of moved here and there to kind of make it work. And it's such a fascinating type of thing, how the film comes off as almost a completely smooth type of experience. You really don't see that quality. There's a lot of times where that type of stuff happens, and you can see the patchwork involved with the entire film, and then it just comes off like a Frankenstein's monster. It doesn't quite work. It's lurching around, and it's kind of falling apart as it's going along. It's a credit to everyone involved with this entire film that it came off so well, and I definitely have to put it on Brad Bird because he handles this thing. It feels effortless. It feels effortless how the film moves, the energy in the entire film, the pacing of the entire film, for the most part, comes off very smooth and gracious and stuff like that. Mission Impossible has become this franchise that kind of stands on its own in a certain way. Outside of trends and all these different things where maybe at the time a lot of things were going a lot more CGI, a lot more green screen type of stuff and all that type of stuff, Tom Cruise is one of those guys. That's why he's helming this franchise as a producer, and he does this with so many other different films. He likes that texture of doing things in reality. Capture it on screen, in camera. Do that type of thing. Do it practically. Do it physically. Don't patch in a green screen. Don't patch in any more CGI than is necessary to enhance the film and clean up cables and stuff like that when you're doing stunt work off the Burj Khalifa and you're God knows how many meters in the air kind of hanging off the building. It's like he's such a guy who's like he pushes for that quality every single time when he's working on films now. And you just feel like Mission Impossible finds its own vibe, finds its own approach, its own style, its own organic sensibility of how to present stories, how to handle action, how to shoot the entire film, and it comes off beautifully. Everything in the film just looks phenomenal. I mean, cinematographer Robert Ellsworth had been the regular cinematographer for Paul Thomas Anderson, won the cinematography Oscar for There Will Be Blood, worked with directors such as George Clooney and Dan and Tony Gilroy, and worked on The Town with Ben Affleck, 8mm for Joel Schumacher. Phenomenal cinematographer. He does a great job with this entire film. Just that Brad Bird energy in this entire film. The way the camera moves in so many different places with whether it's the action sequences, which actually come off phenomenally well. Just so fresh and energetic and so smooth and so gracious, and how everything just flows between everything in this entire film. But even when you get into like the entire thing where they're doing sort of this double switch type of thing, this double con in the Burj Khalifa, where they're in one room and then another one, and where they're trying to do that entire thing where they're trying to get the codes from one and get it off to the other one and trying to switch everything around, how the camera moves and how they show the sort of match cuts and the different things they're showing almost like mirror images in certain ways to just kind of have that sort of language of geography on film. I like so much how that comes together, so well constructed, and how you plan it out and move it around and all that type of stuff. Just how the film moves, how Brad Bird and him make the motion of this entire film just feel so fresh and so timeless. This film still holds up so well because, again, they did so many things practically. It doesn't feel like they're conforming to trends of shaky cam and weird type of things. They're like very confident how to block out and stage and choreograph everything in this entire film. It all comes out very clearly. In all the action sequences, you can feel that they got a great handle and how everything wants to be composed and move all these different things around. Even that opening sequence where Agent Hanaway, portrayed by Josh Holloway, it's a fantastic opening. You get everything clearly conveyed through every little piece of how they photograph it, how they move things, how they use the geography of everything in the entire sequence. It just comes out so very well. I like so much just how the entire film just looks overall, again, a fresh sensibility. Everything just feels so very good, and how everything is photographed and all these wide angles and all these interesting type of things, where they even kind of use different film stocks. Obviously, they have the regular anamorphic 35mm and the IMAX stuff for the climbing on the Burj Khalifa there, but when they went into the sandstorm sequence, they realized this, because the shutter speed on the cameras, all the sand is really just going to be this kind of like orange-brown blur on screen. There's not going to be any texture. So they decided to shoot on super 35mm, so when you blew it up to like IMAX level, it would create an extra texture to the entire thing. You get extra film grain off of this stuff when you blow it up further. So they use that knowledge of film and the film stocks and how you can use different things to different effects to get around that problem. How that thing just, it's just a smart type of thing. How you have all these very experienced people knowing how to use the tools that are at their disposal, and again, do so many things in camera. You don't do as much digitally as you do on set, on location, all these different things, and they just like did amazing things. Just all the shots so much. Just when Tom Cruise is up on the freaking building climbing it, it's just an amazing type of thing how they got these shots. Because it's not like they built a soundstage for it. They're actually shooting it up on the goddamn thing for real. Where they even had to get like a wind machine up there because they realized, hey, we open up the windows, not as much wind coming through here. It's very calm in a certain way, so they had to enhance that as the visual for the entire sequence where things are blowing around and you got just that sense of danger. It escalates the sense of danger when you're that high up and you get that wind going. Just that extra element of the entire thing where they just know what they're doing and know how to add that in for the texture of the reality of the entire thing. This all comes together with how the thing is shot, how it's all composed, how it's all edited together by Paul Hirsch, who just is a guy who edited Star Wars and did so many amazing things. He's one of the best editors in the entire field and had been working for decades at that point in time. This guy is phenomenal. He's done great work, and he just edits this thing perfectly. There's not a flaw anywhere with any cut anywhere in the entire film. It moves so very smoothly, so very well. It's like, it's so good, but you do kind of like, when you get to the Burj Khalifa scene, that's the action climax of the entire film. It doesn't get any more fever pitch, more height of everything, and more of a nucleus of everything going on in the entire film. All the story threads, all the character threads, all these different things was like this, the height of all the anticipation and the excitement and the danger and stuff like that. After that point in the film, it kind of like nothing ever really gets anywhere close to that level again. So you kind of lose a little something after that phenomenal sequence. But of course, you can have all the best stunts in the world, all the best action sequence, all the best technical qualities, but you got to put good characters in there to make the audience care about what's going on. And they got some great actors, great characters in the whole thing, and put together a very good story for a lot of these people. But of course, just like Tom Cruise again, Paramount was trying to minimize him, trying to find like a backdoor out. I was like, I'll transition him out of the franchise and maybe Jeremy Renner will be the new lead or something like that. So it's like the whole thing is like, Paramount, you don't know what you're doing. You have no clue what's going on, because Tom Cruise shows his value so much in this film. He's so committed, so so much like Ethan himself, razor focused. You could see the dedication, the commitment in his eyes when he's in the middle of the whole thing, when he's proving himself on screen, and when Ethan is like dedicated to the mission, knows the stakes involved, knows what's has to happen here, where he has to go to make sure no matter what, the mission gets accomplished. I like so much how you had that, just that energy and that leading man quality Tom Cruise absolutely exudes. He knows how to handle this whole thing. He knows how to work on screen. He knows the subtleties of what he has to bring forth in the performance and how to lead the entire team, lead this ensemble of characters and bring that sort of a little bit of the conflict, a little bit of the tension here and there, but also showing different qualities of relating to like someone like Agent Carter who's kind of doubting here and there and having some problems and kind of having that vendetta in her back pocket and such like that. So you can see how he kind of moves through all this type of stuff, and also how just like with him, Brad Bird, everything like that, the comedy hits off so well, just like how there's such a clever integration of all the humor in the film where it never is disruptive. It's all very much flows so very well out of the action and the danger and all these different things and the drama and the stakes involved in everything. Everything's on such a great wavelength with all the chemistry between everyone in the cast. And Tom just, again, shows beyond just the physicality that he brings forth with the insanity that he has for these action sequences. He shows his quality as a leading man, as an actor, as a vital part of what makes Mission Impossible what it is. And obviously that and everything else involved with this film solidified that, like, Tom Cruise ain't going fucking anywhere. He's sticking with his franchise because it's building it up as one of the best action franchises there's ever been. But getting off, like, you got Jeremy Renner here again. He has to jump through a few hoops because, again, like I said, he starts out shooting the film with one backstory, and then partway through they kind of rewrite everything, and now he has to kind of like readjust to a different backstory where he has to kind of react to Ethan Hunt a little bit differently. He has to get on a little bit of a different wavelength, like the entire scene where it's like they finally decide they can't corrupt the codes, they can't give fake nuclear launch codes off to Hendricks and all that type of stuff. That was written that morning, and he had to kind of like figure out this entire way of having that conflict. It's like grabbing the briefcase, I'm about to throw it out the window and stuff like that. He had to find that vibe, that conflict within the psychology of Brandt. I think he works off so well, gelling with everyone so much. He gets the humor, he gets the vibes of comedy when he's dealing with Simon Pegg or other different things in the film, but he still grasps the drama. When he gets up to that scene where he has to tell the story about being in Croatia and being on the protective detail for Ethan and his wife and stuff like that, and the entire thing where after he came back and found the two guys unconscious and the wife is gone, and finding out through channels that her body had been found and carrying this weight around. So it's like this interesting thing where I don't know exactly all the order of what scenes they shot when, but you can still see that he has that quality and brings it through the entire film. It's a very nice thread that McQuarrie brought to his character. I think just strengthened it, enhanced it, and make it a much more poignant type of thing to just have that more of a close integration with Ethan Hunt there to make everything at the end of the film just feel like a lot more earned overall. Just like him having doubts about, like, I really should be on the team and stuff like that, and he finds out the truth of the whole thing, that Ethan went ahead and concocted his entire, like, fakery about her being dead just so she could remain safe and anonymous and stuff like that. It's a wonderful thread that goes through the entire film, and I think Jeremy Renner adds a lot of value to the entire cast here, this entire dynamic of the team. And of course, I think Simon Pegg is just invaluable, just like him getting in on the third film and just like being a mainstay now. As much as Cruise is, I think just Simon Pegg is so damn good. He's so completely on board with being involved with his franchise, carrying it with him, and still being so very much involved with these good stories and these good characters and all the way to kind of grow with Ethan. Coming now into the whole thing is like, before he's just a tech guy in the lab at the headquarters. Now he's in the field, and I like, again, that quality that he's kind of a little bit untested. He hasn't been really in the real life situations. And so everyone in the entire team has to kind of feel the way through it. They're not a tested team. They haven't already worked together that much. They don't really know how to really work as well. So it's like you have to find these different things. Even though Ethan trusts him, he's still in this situation where Benji is just kind of feeling his way through the intricacies of field work to find out how to actually deal with things when you're right there in front of the situation and think on your feet and move along with the entire thing while still hitting all these wonderful beats of comedy and hitting things off very, very well, where he's got these sort of moments of hesitation where he doesn't really want to give you the bad news, but there's really, really bad news, and you gotta have to dance around a little bit. He's wonderful. He's absolutely perfect. I love him so much. He's such a great addition here, and just amazing adding Paula Patton this whole thing as Agent Jane Carter. She's awesome. Just completely awesome. Just like what she goes through with this character in the film, because again, the Holloway character was her love interest, and now he got killed, and now there's an entire vendetta thing against the assassin here portrayed by Seydoux. And I just like so much. She just knows how to bring it every single time when there's just this moment when she's just got to think about that. When that sort of idea comes up, you can see it in her face, in her eyes, that emotional state that she's going through. The vendetta, the vengeance, all the different things, the anger, the pain, all these things. She's working things so well on a subtle level here, but you can see it so clearly how she goes through these different states, whether she is angry or she's kind of nervous later on when they're in Mumbai and she's got to do this sort of seduction thing to get the codes and whatnot for the satellite and stuff like that. She's so amazing. She's just amazing. Every single point, she just exudes such a radiance of strength. I like so much the quality of what she brings to the screen. This franchise needs more of her. And apparently they did try to get her at least for I think for Rogue Nation or Fallout, but it just there was a scheduling conflict and they couldn't work it out. But if they ever bring her back, I'll be absolutely pleased because she did a fantastic job with this whole thing. And the physicality, she's just on point. When you got her and Seydoux, they got a scrap against one another there, and they got all these great choreography between the two of them fighting up there in the freaking hotel room. Just they do a great job. Great job. I love Paula Patton, this whole thing. She just excels so much in this role. She adds so much value because she's so exceedingly talented. I thought she was absolutely fantastic. Just an amazing find to add to this makeup of this cast and do so many good things. She's just perfectly on point the entire time. And I really like Vladimir Mashov here as Seydoux, the cop that's kind of chasing Ethan around and everything like that. It's not that big of a role, but he just shows you can take a little bit of a role and make it very memorable by just being a very talented actor. To bring the right amount of wit, the right amount of personality into the role. To just make it stick in the audience's mind and have this nice little thread going through the whole thing. Stemming from the Kremlin bombing and just going through the entire film all the way to the end of it, it's a nice piece of work. He does a really goddamn good job of the whole thing. I was very pleased by it. It's this little cog in the entire film, but it adds so much more and throws a little bit of swerve here and there at certain points in time. It's a nice little thing added in there. It's a really well-cast role. And also Nyqvist, a wonderful actor. Again, kind of the weird type of thing was if anyone's seen John Wick, you know this guy can be a heavy like living hell. He was fantastic in that. Awesome villain. Great stuff. This one of Kurt Hendricks, Cobalt, it's just underwritten. You know he can deliver it, but they set up a motivation, they set up the general threat of the nuclear war stuff, but he doesn't get any real material to really just, like you had with Philip Seymour Hoffman, who took something that was probably not a whole lot on the page, but he got enough screen time, enough moments to really flex himself on screen and really show a lot of things for it. With Nyqvist, they didn't give him enough. They didn't give him enough screen time, they didn't give him enough material. He could have been a really fantastic villain if they really gave him something to do on screen that just had enough resonance, enough meat on the bone for him to just chew on and just give us a little something more threatening as a character on screen. So as it is, great actor, not a hell of a great part, but he still filled the role nicely and did some decent things with it, it's just the writing where it kind of fell short overall. And you got a great cast. Again, Seydoux just does a fantastic job here as this Assassin Moreau. Really good, just this cold, calculated business type of thing going on, but she has enough of a presence. She gets enough. She does get enough of a moment, just like from the beginning of the film. She doesn't have to do much except kill Holloway and just have enough of an impression to kind of thread through the entire film, to just have a sensibility that she's someone dangerous. She has a link with another main character here, and she does put off a very good vibe that is threatening and just intimidating to a certain degree. She doesn't have to do much, but it shows enough on screen to have these sequences where there's enough tension involved with it, enough stakes involved with it as well to get something conveyed to the audience that does stick with them very, very well. And returning to score this film, again, was Michael Giacchino, who had already started working on the Star Trek franchise with JJ, and again, guy's become like one of the best composers out there. Again, he's one of these guys, like, when he jumps on these franchises, he's not afraid of the legacy of these whole things, the music that's involved with it. Chris McQuarrie, listening to an interview, was like, sometimes there are certain directors or there's certain composers like, oh, they want to make it their own. They don't want to do the same stuff they did before. They want to kind of deal with the iconography. There's a lot of times, like, people jump on, it's like, oh, I'll throw all the themes out and do something different. Giacchino just wants to go in there and just pay tribute to the stuff and play around with it so much. He does a fantastic job scoring the scene. Even like the music he has when they're in the Kremlin, just like it sounds very Hunt for October, Basil Polidori stuff. Wonderful stuff. Perfect. It does such a great job, again, when they get Mumbai and they kind of have that Indian flavor here and there. There's a lot of different stuff. A lot of different stuff that he does really, really well and comes off very beautifully. I think he did a wonderful job still transitioning this whole thing and still giving a little life, a lot of wit, and a lot of levity here and there, but also just making the action feel so damn good with his music overall. But just talking about the entire story here was such a fascinating thing where Brad Bird wanted to do a Mission Impossible film where basically nothing goes right. The gadgets don't work. The team is kind of untested, and there's all the turbulence that they kind of figure things out as they go. They don't have the resources of the IMF behind them, so they have to make snap decisions, be quick on their feet, and kind of jury-rig things as they go along through the story here, and just shows off very good characters. And it's able to build the characters and get a lot more insight into how they work, how they react to certain situations, how their emotions and all the little things kind of go off, with Brand having these secrets about like him being a field agent, but going off in this cover being like an analyst, and not kind of like giving away the backstory here, knowing all the things he has going on with Ethan, and all the stuff that Carter has to deal with, and all the other little things, just like it all comes together in a very smart, clever, energetic, and interesting story. Put little bumps in the road for the characters, and it makes it a lot more interesting how they have to confront the situations and kind of take the gambles, take the risks that they have to move forward in the story and have to find their way to accomplish the mission against all these adversities. I mean, kind of like the team getting disavowed is kind of the sticking point in the entire franchise. It kind of constantly keeps happening. But it keeps happening in a way on each different film in a very interesting type of way. I think this is like one of the most interesting ways they go about it, because they do have all that stuff where they don't have access to quite as much tech. They can't just call up the headquarters and get back up and crack into things so easily. It's all got to be a little makeshift here and there. And they have to kind of, again, fly by their seat of the pants and try to figure that stuff out and deal with all these different things in these fantastic action sequences. All the stuff from the beginning with Holloway, and then you get into the entire prison break sequence, which does, again, have a little bit of that humor, a little splash of kind of a wink and a nod type of thing where they're playing the Dean Martin, all these different things, and playing between Ethan and Benji across the security camera stuff. All these clever little things they added in the entire makeup, the entire film, flows through so well because, again, you got a fantastic seasoned editor on this entire thing that's worked with Brian De Palma before. He edited the first Mission Impossible film for De Palma, a bunch of other films for him as well. So a guy who knows his stuff to edit the film the right way, to deal with all this stuff they were dealing with in production, kind of reforming the story and all these little things. And it comes off, again, so smoothly because Brad Bird has the skill so well. He's surrounded himself with such good talent that wants to make the very best film possible. And I think they accomplished it. I think this comes off as one of the absolute best Mission Impossible films because it is, again, smart. It gets all the things right in dealing with characters and dealing with the story, even though the Kurt Hendricks Cobalt character isn't all that interesting or all that meaty on screen. You get pulled into the story with the characters of the team of the IMF here. what they're dealing with, their struggles, their conflicts, all the different things, and how they have to be clever going through the hoops of the story here and just hitting off into these fantastic action sequences, all these different things. It's a very good film. It builds on what MM3 was trying to do, gets a lot more substance, a lot more layers of the story into the characters and the overall plot to make a much richer type of thing. And I think it just hits off, they corrected all the right things in the process of producing the film and got things into a much more interesting, streamlined, more satisfying fashion here to get a good story, hit it off in the right beats, get it towards the end of the film where you got that nice entire grace note there, knowing what Ethan has done to keep Julia safe and all these different things and wrapping it all in with Brandon, his storyline. It's kind of perfect how it comes off. Everything kind of comes off so very, very well in that regard. Even though, again, like I said, Burj Khalifa is like this ultimate climax of the film that happens halfway through it. Everything else kind of loses the momentum, doesn't get quite as exciting as it is at that point in time, but it still carries you through the story because still got great humor beats, great action beats, great drama in the entire thing. It still hits off very good stuff. It's such a good film. Brad Bird hit off such great things, even though he kind of goes off and gets Tomorrowland after this. That kind of doesn't hit off quite so strongly. I think there's such a great filmmaker in there that he's proven time and time again in the animation field. I think he could still come back and do a lot more good stuff in live action if he so wants to. I think there's a lot of good stuff he offers. Just like this is evidence, proof positive enough that he can do it. And just again with the right project, again, I think he would nail it out of park again. But it's such a great thing on this whole thing, Ghost Protocol. It was such a thing that just corrected the ship all over the place. Even though, like I said, with Mission Impossible, things like they kind of soft rebooted a little bit, get a little bit more of a proper direction in a certain way. After 2 kind of stumbled and fell off and didn't get critically acclaimed or anything like that, it kind of fell off in a certain way. 3 kind of rebooted to something a little bit more mainstream, a little bit more straightforward, a little bit more just commercial in a certain way. That'd be a lot more pleasing on an action film level. 4 builds on top of that, moves it forward another step, fleshes out characters, gets good storylines going on, and still maintains a fantastic beat of action in this entire film. Just the raising the stakes over and over again in Mission Impossible is just what you've come to expect, and this definitely did that to have everything go off with Rogue Nation and Fallout, still building up on top of that even further. It gets off on great things. So Brad Bird really was such an essential cog to make sure this film came off as well as it did. Had the right things with Cruise, knowing the instincts of when to bring in the right guy to kind of rework things when they felt like things aren't clicking quite so well. It doesn't feel like the beats of the story are really connecting as well as they could. We need to kind of figure out where things are not working, bring the right guy in to reassess everything, rejigger certain things, and get the thing going off in such a fantastic way to just hit off on such great acclaim, great box office, everything like that. It's definitely a fantastic film that still holds up over 10 years later, feels fresh, original, and just absolutely fun and entertaining. So guys, love to hear what you guys feel about Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, where it fits in the entire franchise for you. And I'd also like to recommend the Light the Fuse podcast, where I listen to plenty of interviews, especially the one with Chris McQuarrie and a lot of other different things. They got such a depth of fantastic interviews from cinematographers and writers and all these different people who'd worked on visual effects and stunts, all these different things. They've gone through pieces of the TV series and the franchise all over the place. Go check them out if you're hungry for more Mission Impossible talk and just hearing it right from the people who actually made these films and TV series, all that type of stuff. Go check it out. It's fantastic. Absolutely love it. So guys, thanks so much for tuning in and checking this out review. And if you want to keep this thing going, keep this channel supported in the best ways possible, keep liking, sharing, commenting, all that type of stuff. But also you can contribute a little bit every month over on Patreon and keep things going in a different type of way. So guys, thanks so very much. Take care. Bye-bye.